Hello. So yesterday I did a recording of the Stagger Wing in Microsoft Flight Simulator, the Beechcraft Model 17. And one of the first comments on it, somebody mentioned that the Stagger Wing and the Waco were the most beautiful aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I had never heard of the Waco. So I went looking and I discovered that Carenado had built this little biplane called the Waco YMF5, and this is a modern rebuild of the original YMF5 that you can get for Flight Simulator that Carenado have recreated. And I have to say, it's absolutely stunning. Although the vehicles are looking slightly random in the background, but anyway. So, as you can see, the modelling of it is absolutely wonderful again. So Carenado really have kind of knocked it out of the park, even down to the engine block is just ridiculous. You know, and the material modelling on the exterior is just gorgeous. Even down to little plumbing fittings and things. It's very, very nicely done. Anyway, we are at Boonville. I think it's D83 is the ICAO code for the airfield. Once again, in the Western USA, to go and give this plane a run out and see how it goes. So I've not actually flown it properly yet. I've kind of figured out how to get it started, but not taken off. So it's going to be as much a surprise to me as it is to you. I have had a quick look at the notes on it. And approach speed's about 80 knots, or that's what's advised in the book. It doesn't have flaps, so it's going to be interesting. You can see we've got if we go and jump inside, we've got the quality carries on inside. It's really, really amazingly modelled. So yeah, I get, as is becoming common with Carenado, it looks photographic. And okay, some of the buttons might not work, like the breakers, so it's kind of an approximation of the aircraft. But because this wasn't released through a SOBO, as like I've learnt this, that apparently the Legend aircraft have to follow the ASOBO rulebook, but because this wasn't one of them, then you can move the pilot view outside, which is really helpful because it means you can prop your head outside of the cowl for approach and for takeoff, which makes it an awful lot easier than it would have been. Anyway, so there is a tablet in this version. So if we go and open the tablet, we get some options for the static elements. Let's go and turn some of those on and see what we get. We won't bother with the tow bar. We can show or hide the pilot. We've got the pilot door and the co-pilot door only when the passenger cover is off. So if we hide the passenger cover, so you can see, you can have a second cockpit in here. But if you put the passenger cover back on, then that gets covered over, which is quite cool. There's a baggage door as well. Also, you get some obviously some easy options to start the airplane up. We'll do it by hand; it's not difficult. And the takeoff checklist, like I said, there's not much on the list. Landing checklist. Yeah, so let's go and have a play, shall we? So we'll go and put the tablet back away. So click on the button and it folds itself back in the seat. You will notice this does have some electronics in the cockpit. So it was originally built in the mid-1930s. But obviously this modern recreation has modern switchgear and some modern navigation kit. So it has got an HSI, it has got nav radios, so you can do some nice navigation around the countryside with it using radios. Okay, so let's get this thing started. First thing we're going to do is push the fuel shut-off valves in on either side to let the fuel in. We're going to move the mixture knob to rich. We are then going to go and turn the battery on and the alternator on. We'll go and turn on the beacon light to warn anybody nearby. Obviously, in the real world you would shout and shout clear because you're about to turn the engine over. So how do we do that? We come down here, we just turn the ignition. and the engine has started and it falls back to the right magneto all on its own. Let's just check the volumes. You can hear me over the top of the engine just about, that's fine. Okay, so we can turn the avionics on there, so everything lights up, which is good. Interesting that the transponder was on. Usually it's off and you have to go and switch it on in Flight Simulator. But anyway, we'll turn the pitot heat on, strobe lights and nav lights. And I think that's about it, to be honest. It's quite a simple aeroplane, so you don't need to worry about very much. Okay, come off the parking brake. Like I said, there aren't any flaps. We'll just have a quick look outside. You can see it moving around. The propeller animation is really lovely. Let's have a look at some of the control movements. So if we do that from inside, you do get the sound of the pulleys, and obviously you see all the cables and everything moving around inside, which is really nice. Okay, shall we go and taxi out? So we'll just prop our head. What's the nice thing about this is you can prop your head just to the side of the cowl, so you can still see in front of the aircraft and you can see the indicated airspeed. So let's open the engine gently. There's no wind today. I've set it for few clouds, just purely for clarity reasons, so you get to see the aircraft. So we're rolling. It does move around a little bit, and as with any tail dragger, you have to be ready on acceleration for the moment the tail wheel comes up, and you have to be ready on the rudder to catch it. Full throttle. As with Carenado, you can't damage the engine, so it's good fun. So there we go, we're just keeping it straight on the runway, or straight-ish. Get back on the centre line there. And rotate at 80 knots. It will keep accelerating, it's incredibly powerful, and at that point we can duck behind the cowl. Have a look outside. It's absolutely wonderfully modelled, isn't it? And it sounds gorgeous. Okay, let's turn the reciprocal direction, so we'll start a basic turn. It has got a slip indicator, but it doesn't seem to slip too much. You do need to use rudder a little bit to keep coordinated turns on track. So if we just climb out, and then we'll do some stalls and see how it behaves. So we'll climb out towards the sun. So you can see even at 110 knots, it's climbing remarkably quickly. We've got an indicated vertical speed indicator there. Let's just have a quick look around the gauges actually. So you've got oil pressure, temperature, RPM, manifold pressure. You've got airspeed in miles an hour, not knots. So sorry, I said knots earlier, I meant miles an hour. You've got a turn coordinator. You've got a... It's interesting, look, that's moving. There's a bit of a bug there with the tooltip. Normally I have tooltips off, but I've got it on today. Because you have got nav 1 and nav 2, so there's the nav 2 instrument, there's the nav 1 instrument, so you can do triangulation, which is quite cool. You've got a clock up here, you've got a modern fuel calculator, air temperature, obviously like we said, vertical speed indicator, and a G acceleration meter, which is quite cool. Okay, so we've done some climbing. Turn back towards the airfield. It's remarkably capable. Not only that, it looks amazing. Okay, so first things first, let's pull the throttle back now to about 80%, 70%, and we're going to lift the nose and let it stall under power. Feeding in backstick, and it's dropped the left wing, but not too disastrously. And just by letting the aircraft gain some speed, we were back into control very quickly. Let's try a power off stall and see what happens. So let's get it level. We're just looking at the attitude indicator here. More and more backstick, more and more and more. And it falls roughly in a straight line. I think if you weren't accurate about keeping the wings level, it would drop a wing probably. Okay, let's turn back around, and then while we're turning, we will pull the nose up and it tucks under as most aircraft do. So keep the throttle off, just loop underneath. See if it does the same to the left. Yep. It's completely predictable though. There's no hint of it wanting to go into a spin at all. Okay, let's do a circuit round and go for a landing, shall we? We'll come in at the far end. There's no wind today, so we can choose which direction we come in from. All I'm thinking is the parking is at the closest end. We may well do a circuit though, depends how well the landing goes, I guess. So we'll just loop round. We can freely move around in the cockpit, which is fine using the cursor keys. So we need to be mindful of the landing speed because we have no flaps, so we have to keep the speed up. So 80 miles an hour is mentioned in the notes for it, in the tablet actually. One of the panels in the tablet gives you some performance numbers. Speed. Just keep this panel in view as we turn in. Throttle response is pretty good though, but there is a lot of torque when you open the throttle, so you need to be mindful of that. We're a bit steep here, but there's quite a long runway. Could probably use side slip to keep the speed down on the steep approach. Whoa, I tried to use the wheel brakes there and they were quite vicious. They still are being quite vicious. So I don't have rudder pedals, so I only have digital control over the wheel brakes. I was quite worried there that we were getting near the end of the runway at speed. It's good, isn't it? I'm quite surprised at that. So it was very placid for landing. Much easier to land than the stagger wing. We just held it off the runway and it gently drifted onto the runway without any sign of stalling. Yeah, see what I mean? It's quite vicious. So you have a huge advantage if you have got rudder pedals, being able to apply those brakes smoothly. let's have a look at the other side. I'm having to dab the wheel brakes gently as we roll, just to keep control of this. Okay, so that was the YMF5. So if we pull the mixture back, that should cut the engine, which it has done. So then we can pull the fuel shut-off valves, whoops, and turn off the avionics, turn all the lights off, and we're pretty much good to go. I already did avionics, yep, and then the main battery switch. So something I didn't have a play with. Oh, there's a door for the rear of the aircraft, not for the pilot, so the pilot just climbs over. That's why they're the pads that you could obviously use as leaning posts, I guess, around the place for clambering in and out. They're obviously over the spars along the fuselage. But yeah, you can see there is a door for the passenger seat, because they obviously haven't got any room above to climb in. So should we go and have a play with that just before we leave? So we'll pull the tablet back out and go and open up those passenger. So we'll take the cover off the passenger, and then we can open the co-pilot door, and that's really cool, isn't it? So if we come round with the drone camera, we get to have a closer look at that. The modelling is just out of this world. It really is. I mean, this is the co-pilot seat that you're not going to sit in, and they've modelled it just as well as the pilot seat. But I am very, very impressed. So this is the Waco YMF5 made by Carenado. And yes, there are some generalizations there, and it's simplified in places. But as an experience of something to fly around in Flight Simulator, I think it's great fun. And you may see me flying around in it quite a bit over the next weeks and months. I do enjoy these older aircraft. They're good fun. Okay. So there we go, that was the Carenado YMF5 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I'll see you again soon.